Power in ancient Rome was never taken cleanly. It was swallowed slowly, mixed with fear, whispered through palace corridors, and served in cups that smelled faintly of honey and death. She did not raise armies or march beneath banners. She smiled, embraced, and poisoned. One by one, her own blood collapsed at banquets meant to celebrate unity. By the time Rome understood what was happening, the throne was already soaked in family graves, and the Empress who ordered the deaths was the only one left alive. Rome, in the 1st century, was an empire ruled not only by legions and laws, but by proximity. To sit near power was to inhale danger. The woman history would later remember as Rome's deadliest empress was born into this atmosphere of intimate violence, where kinship offered no protection and love was merely another political instrument. From childhood, she learned that survival depended on anticipation, on striking before suspicion formed. She entered the imperial household young, married not for affection but for position. Her husband was influential, respected, and fatally unaware that ambition had already outgrown loyalty in his wife's mind. The court saw her as composed and obedient, a woman who spoke softly and avoided open conflict. What they did not see were the networks she built quietly, physicians willing to alter prescriptions, servants eager to trade silence for favor, cooks who understood which herbs numbed the tongue and which stopped the heart. Poison was not her invention, but she perfected its use as a political language. It left no scars, no screams, only confusion. Deaths were blamed on weak constitutions, on divine displeasure, on unhealthy excesses of Roman feasting. One relative fell ill after a celebration, another followed weeks later. Each funeral reinforced her image as the grieving survivor, the last pillar holding a fractured family together. As bodies accumulated, so did her influence. Senators deferred to her judgment, advisors sought her approval. She positioned herself as indispensable, the only constant amid sudden loss. When whispers began to circulate, she ensured them reached ears already deafened by fear. Accusers were discredited, transferred, or quietly removed from the city. Rome was vast, but memory was fragile. The most dangerous obstacle was her own child, a legitimate heir who threatened to outgrow her control. She delayed, manipulated, and reshaped his education, molding dependence while preparing contingencies. To rule Rome, she understood, meant choosing power over blood. When the moment arrived, hesitation would have been fatal. By the end of this phase of her ascent, the imperial family tree had been stripped to its barest branches. Those who remained owed their lives to her tolerance. Those who questioned her methods did so in private, if at all. The throne stood closer than ever, not seized by force, but cleared through calculated absence. Rome had not yet realized that the deadliest weapon in the palace wore silk and spoke in whispers. By the time she stood at the center of Roman power, the Empress had learned the most important lesson of imperial survival. Visibility was a liability. Emperors died loudly, their wives endured quietly. She positioned herself as the unseen constant, the voice behind decisions, never the face blamed for their consequences. While the Senate argued and generals postured, she refined control over the domestic heart of the empire, the palace itself. Her true empire was not built in marble halls, but in kitchens, infirmaries, and servants' quarters. She ensured that every cup passed through loyal hands, every remedy through trusted physicians. Rome's elite believed poison was crude, the weapon of cowards. She understood it as precision. A blade required proximity and witnesses. Poison required patience and timing. It turned banquets into executions and celebrations into funerals. When her husband fell ill, the city mourned him as a capable leader taken too soon. Physicians spoke of sudden fever, of exhaustion from governance. She wept publicly, collapsed at the funeral pyre, and withdrew from view just long enough to deepen sympathy. In private, she managed succession with ruthless clarity. Documents were altered, testimonies were revised. Loyal supporters were rewarded with advancement, while doubters were isolated. Her rivals were not fools. They sensed patterns, noticed the trail of sudden deaths that followed her rise. But accusation without proof was suicide. Rome's courts demanded witnesses, and witnesses rarely survived long enough to speak. One noblewoman who hinted at knowledge was accused of adultery and exiled. A freedman who bragged of secrets was found drowned in the Tiber. Fear did the work of enforcement better than soldiers ever could. Yet power brought a new danger: independence. The more authority she accumulated, the more she threatened Rome's expectations of female obedience. To counter this, she cultivated the image of necessity. She portrayed herself as the stabilizing force holding the empire together after relentless loss. Senators began to rely on her memory of policy. Military commanders consulted her judgment on appointments. She became indispensable by design. The most chilling transformation occurred within her own household. Meals became rituals of trust. Children were taught to eat only what she approved. Tutors and nurses were rotated frequently, preventing loyalty from forming anywhere but upward. Affection was rationed, weaponized. Love became conditional, tied to obedience. Those who displeased her were not punished immediately. They were watched, measured, and removed when their absence would cause the least disruption. Rome's historians would later struggle to reconstruct this period, confused by the lack of dramatic confrontation. There were no rebellions, no public trials, no obvious coups. Only a gradual thinning of names from records, a succession of funerals attributed to fate. That was her greatest achievement. She turned murder into administration, death into governance. By the end of her consolidation, the throne no longer needed to be seized, it simply waited. Those who might have claimed it were gone. Those who might have opposed her were compromised. Rome still believed itself ruled by tradition and law, unaware that the empire's future now rested in the hands of a woman who had mastered the art of killing without being seen.
Absolute power never arrives without resistance. As the Empress tightened her grip, whispers spread beyond palace walls. Senators began to exchange glances during sessions. Generals delayed responses to her messengers. Rome had not forgotten how empires collapsed when fear replaced legitimacy. What they did not yet realize was that fear was precisely her instrument. She responded not with force, but with generosity. Lavish games filled the circus. Grain shipments arrived on time. Taxes were quietly reduced for key provinces. Rome prospered just enough to dull suspicion. Public gratitude smothered private doubt. While the city celebrated, she continued her quiet work, identifying the remaining obstacles to uncontested rule. Her own blood proved the most dangerous. Sons grew older, ambition awakened. One began cultivating allies among the Praetorian Guard. Another spoke too openly at banquets, forgetting walls had ears. Maternal affection had once shielded them. Now it became a liability. She faced a choice no law could justify, only power could. The first removal was subtle, a sudden illness after a hunt. The physicians blamed spoiled meat and fatigue. Mourning rituals followed protocol. Rome pitied her as a mother struck by tragedy. The second was more complicated. His popularity demanded discretion. He was sent on an extended journey, praised publicly, poisoned privately. His body returned weeks later, unrecognizable from decay, questions buried with him. By now, the palace moved like a machine tuned for silence. Servants no longer asked questions. They understood survival depended on ignorance. The Empress no longer pretended innocence even in private. She spoke openly of necessity, of Rome's fragility, of how mercy invited chaos. In her mind, she was not a monster, she was a custodian. Foreign rulers sensed the shift. Envoys described her as calm, calculating, unnervingly precise. Treaties favored Rome, borders stabilized, trade expanded. From the outside, her reign appeared effective, even admirable. Inside the capital, something colder took hold. Fear replaced loyalty, obedience replaced devotion. Rome functioned, but it no longer trusted. The Senate attempted one final assertion of authority. A proposal to limit imperial influence over succession was introduced, carefully worded to avoid accusation. She attended the session personally, dressed in mourning black, her voice steady. She reminded them of recent chaos, of civil wars sparked by uncertainty. She named the dead, not as victims, but as warnings. The proposal died without a vote. From that moment forward, opposition dissolved. Rome did not fall into tyranny overnight. It slid there quietly, willingly, grateful for stability. Citizens praised peace without noticing its cost. The Empress no longer needed poison daily. Her reputation now did the killing for her. Men removed themselves rather than risk her attention. Yet even she understood the truth history would reveal. An empire ruled by fear does not end in triumph. It waits. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, resentment grew. Somewhere, someone was watching, learning the same lessons she once had. Power could be taken, poison could be replicated, and Rome, eternal as it claimed to be, remained fragile in the hands of those who believed themselves untouchable.
Time, which spared no emperor, began to turn against her. The city still obeyed, but obedience no longer felt like control. The streets of Rome were quieter now, not with peace, but with restraint. People spoke softly in taverns. Jokes vanished. Even celebrations carried an edge of caution. Rome had learned to survive by silence. Within the palace, isolation replaced triumph. Those closest to her had either died, fled, or learned never to contradict. Advisors offered only confirmation, never counsel. Information reached her filtered, softened, shaped to avoid displeasure. She ruled everything except the truth. And without truth, even the sharpest mind drifts toward paranoia. Dreams haunted her nights. Faces returned, some familiar, others forgotten. They did not accuse, they watched. She woke often before dawn, listening for footsteps that never came. Power had granted her the throne, but it had stripped her of rest. She trusted no one fully, least of all herself. The poison, once a tool, became a habit. She tested new mixtures endlessly, refining effects, timing, invisibility. Knowledge replaced comfort. Control replaced affection. Rome still feared her, but the fear now echoed back inward. Each cup she raised, each meal served, reminded her of how easily the roles could reverse. Succession became the final question. No heirs remained untainted by blood or suspicion. Allies suggested distant relatives, military strongmen, symbolic figures. She rejected them all. Weak successors invited civil war. Strong ones invited revenge. Rome demanded continuity, yet continuity threatened her legacy. She attempted to secure history itself. Records were altered, stories reshaped. Poets were commissioned to praise her wisdom. Sculptures depicted serenity instead of calculation. Rome's memory, she believed, could be trained like any other instrument. What she underestimated was time. Time erodes monuments. Time exposes patterns. When illness finally came, it was not sudden. It lingered. Physicians whispered. Remedies failed. She suspected betrayal in every dose offered. In the end, she dismissed them all, choosing isolation over trust. If death came, she would face it alone, as she had ruled. The city responded not with revolt, but with waiting. Rome had learned patience under her reign. Senators prepared for transition. Generals counted loyalties. The machine she built continued running, even as its architect faded. That was her greatest achievement and her final irony. When she died, Rome did not erupt, it exhaled. Some mourned stability, others celebrated quietly. Official ceremonies praised her strength, her intelligence, her protection of the empire. Privately, stories spread of dinners that ended abruptly, of bloodlines erased, of power secured drop by drop. History would debate her motives endlessly. Was she evil or merely ruthless, a monster or a product of Rome itself? The truth lay somewhere darker. She did not poison her family out of madness. She did it because Rome rewarded survival above virtue. Empires are not built by innocence. They are maintained by those willing to cross lines others fear. She crossed them all, believing the throne justified everything. In doing so, she proved a lesson Rome would relearn again and again. Absolute power does not corrupt slowly. It clarifies who you truly are and what you are willing to destroy to remain standing.
After her death, Rome entered a strange interlude. There was no immediate collapse, no riots, no purges. The mechanisms of power she had perfected continued to function almost automatically. Grains still arrived, guards still stood at their posts, decrees were still obeyed. It was as if the empire itself hesitated, uncertain whether to mourn or to move on. Behind closed doors, however, the reckoning began. Senators reviewed sealed records, correspondence never meant to be read, inventories of confiscated estates. Patterns emerged with terrifying clarity. Entire families erased, not by war, but by proximity. Successions redirected by coincidence. Illnesses clustered around ambition. What had once seemed rumor hardened into undeniable structure. Yet no one spoke publicly. To condemn her outright would be to admit complicity. Too many had benefited, too many had survived because others had not. Rome's elite chose silence, not out of loyalty, but out of self-preservation.
History would remember fragments, not indictments. The people sensed the shift immediately. Markets grew louder, laughter returned to taverns. Fear did not vanish, but it loosened its grip. For the first time in years, citizens argued openly about the future. Stability remained fragile, but hope, however cautious, re-entered the city. Her statues still stood, untouched. No one dared deface them. To remove her image too quickly risked inviting chaos. Rome understood symbolism. Erasure could provoke rebellion as easily as remembrance. So her likeness remained, cold marble eyes watching streets that no longer belonged to her. In distant provinces, governors assessed the damage quietly. Some had enforced her will with enthusiasm, others had merely complied. All waited to see which past would be forgiven. Letters traveled slowly, filled with reassurance, pledges of loyalty, careful distance from the fallen Empress. The new regime, whoever it would be, faced an impossible inheritance. Power centralized through fear does not decentralize peacefully. Systems designed to eliminate rivals do not suddenly tolerate dissent. Rome stood at a crossroads built from her choices. Scholars later debated whether her reign strengthened the empire or hollowed it out. On maps, Rome expanded. In ledgers, wealth increased. On the streets, order prevailed. But beneath the surface, trust had been replaced by calculation, loyalty by caution. These wounds were invisible but enduring. Generations later, her name would resurface in whispers whenever power concentrated too tightly. Parents warned children, advisors warned rulers. Poison became metaphor. Her story transformed from biography into cautionary myth. She had believed she could outlive judgment by controlling narrative. She was wrong. History is patient. It does not rush to condemn, but it never forgets patterns. Rome remembered her not as a savior, nor solely as a villain, but as a mirror showing what happens when survival becomes ideology, when love becomes expendable, when power demands blood not once but repeatedly. Her reign proved that empires do not fall only by invasion or disaster. Sometimes they are slowly rewritten from within, until violence feels like administration and murder feels like policy. Long after her name faded from official decrees, her methods endured. Rome moved forward, crowned new rulers, celebrated fresh victories. Yet the shadow of her reign lingered in how power was exercised. Future emperors studied her life not as a warning, but as a manual. They learned when force was too loud, when fear was more efficient, when removal was safer than confrontation. Poison became less literal, but no less present. Careers ended quietly. Exiles replaced executions. Accusations surfaced without sources. The empire refined her approach, sanding down brutality into bureaucracy. What she had practiced openly, others perfected discreetly. Rome grew cleaner on the surface, colder underneath. The family, once sacred, never fully recovered its innocence within imperial politics. Blood ties were no longer shields, but vulnerabilities. Mothers watched sons with caution. Brothers measured each other's ambition. Marriage became strategy before affection. Love survived, but it learned to coexist with suspicion. Writers struggled to frame her legacy. Some described a necessary tyrant who preserved Rome during dangerous transitions. Others depicted a predator who fed on proximity. Neither fully captured the truth. She was neither aberration nor inevitability. She was possibility, the outcome when power faces no meaningful resistance. The empire itself bore her fingerprint in its later fractures. When civil wars erupted generations later, historians traced their origins not only to armies and ambition, but to the erosion of trust she had normalized. Once fear replaces dialogue, reconciliation becomes impossible. Rome learned this too late, repeatedly. Her story survived because it resonated. Every era recognized something familiar in her ascent. The belief that control justifies cruelty. The idea that stability excuses sacrifice. The comfort of convincing oneself that there is no alternative. These arguments did not die with her. They merely changed names. In the end, she achieved exactly what she wanted. She ruled without challenge. She shaped Rome according to her will. She removed every threat she could see. What she failed to control was the echo. Her reign taught future rulers that survival mattered more than virtue. That lesson proved far more dangerous than any poison she ever poured. Empires are remembered not only by their triumphs, but by the habits they pass forward. Rome carried hers like an inheritance, invisible yet heavy. And somewhere within that vast machinery of power, her presence remained, not as a ghost, but as a precedent. History does not ask whether she loved Rome. It asks what Rome became because of her. The answer is complex, uncomfortable, and enduring. She proved that the most lethal weapon of an empire is not the sword, nor the army, nor even fear itself. It is the moment when killing becomes routine, justified, and forgettable. That was her true legacy. Not death, but normalization. Not terror, but acceptance. And in that quiet transformation, Rome lost something no conquest could ever restore.